Hey everybody, this is Corey from Wet Shaving Products, and today I'm with Matt Darrington. I said that right?
That's
Darrington.
close enough. There you go.
Darrington. I already messed it up again. Um, Unfortunately, Matt lives in a different state, so instead of doing this interview face to face, we're going to do it over a Zoom call here. Matt, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell everybody who you are in case nobody knows who you are.
Sure. So my name is Matt Darrington. I am in Southeast Idaho, Idaho Falls, more precisely. That's about an hour and a half south of Yellowstone National Park, um, on the other side of the Tetons from Jackson, Wyoming. So if that kind of gets you an idea of where we're at, and I make traditional shaving brushes. Unfortunately, not in sunny Arizona. Our temperature right now is in the single digits. I'm bundled up in the shop here. That's the reason. The shop heater has a hard time keeping up. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. Traditional shaving brushes out of polyester resin is kind of my passion. That's what I like to do.
Awesome. Well, before we continue on things, traditionally in these interviews, I share a drink with the fellow person I'm interviewing. But since we're separated, we won't be sharing the same drink today. Uh, but today I have Santan Brewery, which is based here in Chandler, and this is their Juicy Jack, a juicy hazy IPA. They describe it as a hazy IPA showcasing mosaic and cashmere hops, which explode with aromas of peach, guava, and tangerine. Fruity and juicy, a, a generous amount of oats are added to give Juicy Jack a rich and full bodied flavor. So I'm going to pour this in my cup here. Matt, did you have anything to drink today, or am I going solo?
Yes. So
What do you
no,
got?
no, I will join you. Now I'm not known for alcohol. I don't drink alcohol. But I am known for copious amounts of caffeine, especially in the shop. So today we are having the finest Red Bull, the coconut edition, which is my favorite one. Um, Simply because I usually am in the shop late at nights, and so I'm typically needing that extra boost. So while you might be winding down, I'll be revving up a little bit.
Awesome. I hit the same thing, although I have a different drink of choice when it comes to the energy, but right on,
Sure.
man. Well, to start off this interview, cheers. And I apologize for any beer mustache I'm about to have here.
No, it's all right. I get it. I understand the struggle.
Cheers.
Perfect.
Well, awesome, man. Cheers. So, okay, the name of your company, uh,
Teton
Titan,
shave.
Teton Shave.
Teton shaves. Yeah.
Where did the name come from?
So the Tetons are a really impressive mountain range that have been in the background of my entire life. They're basically, if you think of the Idaho Wyoming border, there's a mountain range right between them, and that's the Tetons. So if you've ever seen um, those iconic three peaks from a lot of times Jackson will feature those in their tourism photos, all that kind of stuff. That's the Tetons. So Teton shaves. It seemed fitting. My motto is inspired by the elements of nature that connect us all, and that's they've just been ever present in my life, and so it seemed fitting to name the company after them.
Nice. I'm a sucker for great logos, and I'm saying I enjoy your logo a lot. So
Appreciate
you
it.
got the beard there, obviously representing what you got there. But is that
Yes,
the Teton Mountains there?
there you go. Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
Well, thank you for the magnet here.
Absolutely.
You make custom brushes, or do you have set brushes you constantly always sell to, or is it just always new custom brushes and new ideas?
Sure. It's a little bit of a mixed bag. So I do have custom. I do have a limited um, number of custom slots available a year. Those usually fill up pretty quick, so I don't do a lot of custom work, but they're always in the works. And then I have my standard series, which is called the Zen series, and they have
Yeah.
a series of stacked rocks in the bottom, and it's a standard shape. So this is a good example of a Zen series brush with
Awesome.
the stacked rocks in the bottom. It would just be a standardized shape. The colors vary, but that's one that I will that would be considered a stock brush. Then, of course, I do the customs. I do releases with different people. I just did one with local concert hall here for a touring band. That was kind of fun. Um, so I do a lot of that kind of work. And then the rest of it is going to be either things that I want to do that scratch a certain creative itch for me, things that challenge myself as a craftsman. Maybe it's a new way to work with the resin or something like that. And those are all just one offs. So with me, you either get customs, the stock Zen series, or one off brush.
Right on. I assume, would this be considered one of the
Yes,
stocks
that's
brushes?
the Zen series. So that was when I first started the Zen series. They were all kind of one offs. They were all different shapes, different sizes, different colors, and things. And I wanted something a little bit more um, standard. And so I went away from doing them like that to these kind of slim, modern design with the thumb groove in the side.
Yeah, yeah.
And they've been well received. It's a little bit more of a modern look. Um, but I figured if I wanted to offer something a little bit different for those, and then if people want the more traditional look, I've got those offered as the one-offs.
Awesome, man. So it sounds like your job really pushes the aesthetics of the brush. How much effort goes into the practicality of the brush, or is more of a effort and attention put into the aesthetics?
Sure. I would say it's actually far more function over any kind of like aesthetics. The aesthetics come second, with a few little exceptions. On occasion, I'll turn something that's really big, and it has to be big because I'm putting something big inside of it. Obviously, we're doing that for the look. It's kind of a novelty or something like that. But most of the time, I'm really thinking about how it fits in the hand. If you can lather up with on your face or on your head or in a bowl with it, and I try to come up with the designs around that.
Right on. And are those things, how it leathers, how it molds, are those the typical things, whether your brushes or other brushes, that make a good brush? What constitutes a good brush, or is it more of a subjective thing than an objective?
Sure. There's an enormous amount of personal preference here. Um, so a brushes you can kind of you can dissect them into probably the two biggest camps would be synthetic, like this one. It's all dusty. It's in the shop. This is the one that I show people when I'm teaching a class or whatever. I'll have that one there. So synthetics like this one, or natural fibers like this one. So this is a badger knot. This is a synthetic knot. Those are probably the two biggest camps. And then, as far as the handle is concerned, you have natural materials like wood. This is black limba, actually uh, harvested in your neck of the woods. I was in
Okay.
Arizona about 5 years ago when I started the company, and I harvested a chunk of wood, and that's where that came from.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and then and then resin brushes like these, or like my traditional or the Zen series brushes. So that's kind of the camps that they fall into. As far as what makes a good brush and what makes a bad one, beyond that, it's all personal preference, really. Some people, you know, natural fibers are, well, they're natural fibers, so they have quite a degree of variance. So if you've ever seen badger brushes, A lot of times they'll say this is the seventh version, the V5 Badger knot, the V6 Badger knot, or whatever. And the reason they do that is because each batch is dramatically different, and so they have to treat them like a different product. Otherwise, they're the base um, the customer may be purchasing something expecting it to be what they had before, and it's
Uh-huh.
dramatically different. So I played that game for a little while, and I got kind of frustrated with it. And then COVID hit, and that was the final nail in the coffin for my um, badger chasing days. So I developed a synthetic knot. That's actually what is in that brush behind you. It's the Badger Synth, is what I call it, and it's as close to natural fibers as I can get. And I worked hard to get that to be as close to a badger feel as I could get. But the beauty of that brush is it's the same every time. There's no different versions, there's no different additions or anything like that. It's always going to be the same. And so if you're a barber and you're selling my brushes in your shop, to have a huge degree of variance is going to be a very difficult thing to sell. To have something that's consistent and the same, that was my goal with that.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of our customers, I'll use your brush as an example of other custom brushes aside from the brushes we sell here. Um, and most of the customers really like the synthetic there. I enjoy it.
Sure. Yeah, and so it's not to um, uh, bag on any brush maker that is chasing the badger and the natural fibers and stuff. It's totally cool. I just it, there was other places I wanted to focus my energy and go after a little bit different market. Um, so so yeah, to answer your question, that's a really long way to answer a simple question, to say that a lot of it comes down to personal preference
Oh,
and your personal style.
right on. There we go. A little bit of visual difficulty there. So, how did you get involved in this? How did you get started? Where'd this all come from? What made you
Sure.
start making brushes, and how did you get involved in the community in the first place? Being a guy with the beard, what's going on?
Sure. So the beard is relatively recent. I haven't had it forever. In fact, when I was going to school, I when I was going to college, um, I attended a school that required that I shave every single day, and so they wouldn't even. And it was crazy. It's become significantly more lax now, but when I was going to school, they wouldn't even let you on campus if you had a couple days growth or something. So they were very strict about it, and so I had to shave every day, and my face was just getting ripped up. It was just like hamburger by the end of the week. And my dad was a traditional wet shaver, kind of in his infancy. He wasn't a fanatic about it, but he had some soaps and some different, a few razors, and I thought I want to give that a try and see if that works better. He gifted a set to me, and it changed the way I shave ever since then. It was like night and day different. It was like the one week I was doing the old traditional cartridge razors that everybody hates paying for, and then I went down the wet shaving rabbit hole. So I did that until I graduated college, and then I moved away for a short time, uh, chasing a career, and I experienced an enormous amount of depression. I've battled depression my whole life. I've been very vocal about it. It's something I've talked openly about. Um, but one night it really came to a head about 6 years ago, and I needed something. I was laying awake at night, 4 a.m., worried about my family, the finances, all the things a dad worries about, right? And I needed something to get me out of my head. And I found a lathe on a garage sale site in my area. I went and picked it up and decided that something spinning at my face at 3,000 RPMs would demand my attention. So maybe get break that vicious cycle where you worry and then you worry more and then you worry more, and maybe this is something that could break that. and it turned out to be extraordinarily effective. And I call it shop therapy. So I find that it really helped me with my depression. And while I was out there turning, the first thing I wanted to do was turn a shaving brush for my dad. He was the one who got me into it. He was the one who showed me how to do that, and it was something that I felt like I could achieve. And so I turned him a little travel brush. It's nothing fancy. It's actually quite rudimentary, very simple in its shape, but it's functional. And I was so proud of it. And I remember coming out of the shop and having a finished product and being super proud that I had accomplished something. And the light bulb went off that I had. Not only am I not feeling depressed, but I have this enormous sense of accomplishment that I've done something. And so I've been chasing that ever since. And it's been about 4 years now. And that's the origin of Teton Shaves and continues to be the motivation behind it. Not, I mean, not that the depression isn't under control, because it is, but that sense of accomplishment and that sense of fulfillment comes from spending nights and weekends out in the shop and turning brushes that people love. It really makes me happy.
That's awesome. Do you do you enjoy more the aspect in the job of the pride you get after making a brush, customers buying a brush, and hollering and enjoying brushes, or the the process itself of making the brush, but also getting to work with your hands, are both equally important. The process and the product itself. And one of the things I like about working at WSP, being the head of production, is I get to work with my hands, and I like that I have a job where I'm not in front of a computer screen or this or that, but I'm constantly doing things. And luckily, I get to do a wide variety of things. But how about that for you?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a good question. I would do this for free. And in fact, for a lot of years, I did. I paid a lot of money to do it. I, for me, it's about the creative outlet. For if you don't know, I work in digital marketing for a daytime gig. Um, I call it a daytime gig because this takes as much time as that does.
Uh,
So I don't want to say this is like a part-time gig and that was the full-time one, because that's not the case. I spend just as much time thinking and building out here in the shop as I do in marketing. But at the end of the day, in digital marketing, there's nothing tangible. Like you said, you're sitting in front of a computer screen. Maybe there's some projects you enjoy, and I am passionate about that. I like digital marketing. You mentioned the logo, and that's kind of that is a boost to my confidence a little bit. I get to scratch the graphic design itch on occasion, but really for me, it's a stark contrast from my day job where I'm sitting on a computer typing things and making, writing copy and doing that kind of stuff. And when I come out here, it's very, very tangible. It's very real. It's very like, um, I don't know, like I can work all day, and when I'm done, there's nothing to show for it. And then I come out here and I work all day, and I've got a handful of beautiful brushes that I'm really proud of that I hope someone gets to enjoy as much as I enjoyed making them. So for me, that's really what it's about.
nice. When it comes to the creative aspect of making these brushes, is it you have an idea in your head and then you try to flesh out that idea, or you just start from scratch, start going, and then things make themselves as you continue to make it, or maybe a little bit of both? Like, what's the process in the artistic aspect of creating these brushes?
Sure. The brush makers tend to fall into two different camps. There's people who let the brush do the talking. They'll get the piece on the lathe and they'll just kind of have this kind of organic flow with it, and then whatever happens happens. I'm not in that camp. I would find that stressful. Um, what I like is I have an idea in my head, and as I um, develop as a craftsman, as my skills get better, as my tools get better, as you know these things, the thing that I have in my head more closely resembles what actually comes off of the lathe. And that to me is extremely rewarding. So when I go to the lathe, I have a piece of material that I'm going to turn, and I pretty much know exactly how I want it to turn out. And when I started, they would vary wildly from what I actually intended. But now um, it's pretty accurate. You know, I have an idea in my head. I can replicate that quite easily on the lathe, and yeah, so that's kind of my creative process. Sometimes I'll get an idea at 4 a.m. and I just can't wait to get out in the shop, and I'll have to write it down real quick so that I don't forget the shape or whatever it was I was trying to achieve. And so that at that point it'll be something that's written down with a few measurements or something. But for the most part, it's a shape in my head that I try to achieve on the lathe.
Right on. Same true with like the color schemes you got going on, or
Yeah, those are a little bit more organic. So when I'm doing my custom brushes, I have very intentional colors, whatever the customer wants. If I'm doing a brush for a soap release or something like that, it's very intentional. If I have a themed release, I've done a handful of those, very intentional. Apart from that, um, I've I kind of let it let it turn out the way it's going to turn out. So I'll take some colors that I think will look good together. I'll mix them together. Every once in a while, we get a dog, and that one ends up in the recycle pile. But for the most part, I'm in the camp that you can, if it's turned properly, you can make just about anything look good. So yeah, as long as I have a blank. In fact, I've got a couple of them here. This is a good example of something that I would turn. I make all of these, by the way. They're all polyester resin, um, and just a very simple shape. And so you can do that's what I like to have, or a simple color scheme rather.
oh,
That's what I like to have because the door's wide open for creativity. You could make this into something that looks like a double duck. You know, you could almost do something like this with it. This is not one of my brushes, but you could easily get something similar to
right.
that, or you could do something wild and crazy with it with all the twisted flutings, and it would handle that just fine. I When I make a blank, that's kind of what I'm looking for, is something that allows me the freedom on the lathe to do basically whatever I want to do.
When you do come up with these ideas, is it just something that's there in your head, or do you sketch it out first and get a visual, or you just straight up Mozart? You have it here, and then it comes out there.
So yeah, Um, that's developed over the years. It used to be I had to write it down on paper, or I'd have a notebook with me all the time, and I'd draw shapes or I'd see them. So one funny story: I was at a Super Bowl party, and there was a jar of salsa, and I loved the shape of it. It kind of had this cool hourglass shape thing, and I was like, "Oh man, that would be an awesome shaving brush." And so I like quickly took out my notebook and like drew kind of the shape of it, and and ultimately made that into a brush. I've actually turned it into a couple brushes now. Um, but that's what it used to be. I used to draw things down, and it would just help me not to forget things. But now uh, I I more or less can just do it straight out of my head. There's no need to write it down or anything like that. I can kind of just um, have the idea and pretty accurately uh, replicate it on the lathe. But inspiration comes from everywhere. I mean, I'll see something funky, like I'll see a cool curve on a car or a motorcycle or something, or a lot of times I get it from adjacent uh, industries. So, like in the barber industry, they have all these tools that they're using, and they have different ergonomic shapes and things that are kind of interesting that you wouldn't normally see.
Oh,
So I take note of those things, but yeah, it's more or less just in my head and then replicated on the lathe.
good. So what's like the most unique request you've ever gotten, or an idea you've had, and maybe you haven't mastered it yet, or an idea a customer had, and you did do it, but like, well, I would have never thought of this. Like, any of those things that come your way?
Sure, I get some wild requests for customs that I generally turn down. So because this is Teton shaves works for me because it's a in a very specific way. Like I said, it scratches that creative itch. It's not a stressor. You know, when I come out in the shop, it's inconsequential. If something explodes on the lathe, which happens on occasion, that's okay. It's not a big deal, and it's the one part in my life where I can make a mistake and have almost no consequences at all. So if it's going to do something other than that, I don't want to be involved in it. So I had some people that wanted me to put some really sentimental things in a brush.
Mm,
I'm not going to do that. That absolutely ruins what Teton shaves is for me because it becomes a really high stress, high demand situation. Um, but if it's something that is fun and enjoyable, then absolutely I'm all for it. Probably the most unique one I've ever done. I actually kept for myself because I knew I never wanted to do it again. But so I have this stacked rocks thing, right? In the West, if you see stacked rocks, you're supposed to stop and take note of why they're there. Out in the mountains, if there's some unnatural formation like stacked rocks, it was pretty intentional. Somebody had to put those there. They're marking something important, whether it's a change in the trail or a grave site or something like that. And I got kind of obsessed with that idea of like marking your trail. Like what do your stacked rocks mean? What is this? And I wanted a representation of that every morning when you shave, like a series of stacked rocks, marking your life's path. You know, did you overcome addiction? Did you get out of a bad relationship? Did you graduate college? Did you, you know, whatever your thing is that you want to be reminded of every morning, that's what these stacked rocks represent. That's the Zen series. And the first one is this one here, and I call it the Rook, and it has stacked rocks all the way through the top, so the bottom clear through the top. And the way I achieved that is with this top part was with a, basically creating a ring of resin, filling it with rocks, and then a plug of resin in the middle so that I could drill through to fit the knot. And the margin of error is so very razor thin because if you get it wrong, you get into those rocks and it explodes on the lathe. And so it was quite quite a stressful venture. So I made one of one, and I've kept it for myself. So that's probably the most unique brush I've made.
right on. I apologize, but the screen on your end froze again, so I didn't get to see the question you were displaying
Oh darn it! Oh, I wonder why that's happening. I
it.
apologize, but yeah. So
Oh, nice.
so I
Oh,
call
that's
it the
cool.
Rook.
I dig
So
that.
it's rocks all the way top to bottom. So it's not just an effect. Let's see if I can bend that over. So you can kind of see there's rocks
Oh yeah, you got
all the way all the way to the top. And it was just a really, I knew it could work when I thought about it, but I didn't realize just how razor thin the margin of error was going to be, and it in fact was extremely thin. So I I thought just the one. I'm not doing that one again.
nice. I have to say, I've seen a lot of the videos of you making these brushes, and what are the tools you use, and
The chisels,
the
yeah,
and then you had already said it before that spins. Just the whole
the
process.
lathe,
Yeah, the
sure.
whole process just looks really fun. Every time I see you do it, I'm like, I want to give that a try. It looks like fun. As you say,
Yeah.
probably it looks soothing and relaxing as well.
You know, I have been building stuff all my life. You know, my dad is a blue collar guy. He was doing brick masonry for a while, framing. I've done so. I kind of grew up around that stuff, and I've always been building. but the lathe is something different. Um, it's kind of adjacent. The skills are kind of adjacent to your carpentry skills and things like that, but they're pretty dramatically different. And that's what was appealing to me, because I wanted to do something entirely different, entirely new, and and those skills are not transferable anywhere else. So you work really hard to master the chisels on the lathe, and that's all that it's good for. And I was okay with that, because I'm not trying to make this into something else. It's not like, if you know how to run a saw, you can frame and you can roof and you can do all these things, right? With the lathe, it's much more specialized, and to me, that was kind of cool about it. I liked that.
Awesome, man. Well, cool. So you said you've been in business 3 years with Teton
Uh,
Shaving?
this is my fourth year. Yeah,
Fourth year. Okay. Awesome.
it has steadily been growing every single year. Um, there's been a few pivots we've made recently that have really kind of exploded it on my end, and we're running into the issue of bottleneck in production. Imagine that. The only way that these get done is me standing in front of this lathe, and that's become the major business issue. Whereas before, it was like creating demand, making sure people were aware, an awareness issue. So we've now shifted, we've matured to having other business issues, and I'm actually very grateful to have them, because it's been really fun to chase all those down, and it's opened up a lot of doors. It's been really cool.
Awesome. So the company is called uh, Teton Shaving. I said that
Teton
right.
shaves. Yep.
Teton Shaving. And where can people reach you at? How can they find you?
Sure. Of course, all the socials. I'm very active on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Just about anywhere on social media. My brushes for the retail brushes are sold at murphyandmcneil.com. Or if you just Google Teton shaves, it'll be the first thing that shows up. And then if you're interested in a custom brush, the best way to do that is to reach out through Instagram.
Right on. Awesome. Well, thank you, Matt. I appreciate this time to converse and share a drink with.
Yes,
Cheers.
sir.
Stay warm over there, and look forward to seeing more coming from you. And maybe for those out there, seeing something we do together. Brushes. These suckers are really cool. Everyone I show them to is really fascinated and very interested in them. So,
Well,
well,
thanks
thank
for the
you.
interview. Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it. And yeah, next time I'm down south, I'll swing in and say hi. I'd love to meet you guys.
Yeah, we'd love to have you. Right on, man. Well, enjoy that rockin' beard and
Yes, sir.
take care.
All right. Thank you, sir.